A 500-year-old book about murdering your enemies and seizing power contains one sentence that explains why you're still single. And it's not the sentence you think. Machiavelli buried it in chapter 17, between lessons on executing traitors and crushing rebellions. But when a psychology researcher at Stanford accidentally discovered this same principle in a study about rats and cocaine, everything changed. Because what Machiavelli observed in the courts of Renaissance Italy, what that researcher confirmed in a lab, and what the guy who effortlessly attracts women is doing right now without even knowing it, they're all the same thing. And here's what's going to make you angry. You've been lied to, not by accident, on purpose. Because if you understood what I'm about to show you, an entire industry collapses. The advice you've been following, the just be yourself and communicate your feelings and show her you care, that's not designed to help you. It's designed to keep you exactly where you are. Once you see why, you can't unsee it. Before we go deeper, hit that subscribe button. This channel exists to break down the social dynamics that nobody else will talk about honestly. And if that's valuable to you, you'll want to see what's coming next. Here's what we're covering today. First, the specific line from Machiavelli that reveals why desperation repels and indifference attracts. Second, the psychological mechanism that makes this work, backed by modern research that Machiavelli couldn't have known about but somehow predicted. Third, why most advice about attraction is designed to keep you stuck. Fourth, the 3 behaviors that signal scarcity versus abundance without saying a word. Fifth, how to recalibrate your entire presence so you stop chasing and start choosing. And finally, the one mistake that even confident men make that destroys attraction instantly. Let's start with what Machiavelli actually said. Chapter 17 of The Prince asks a question: is it better to be loved or feared? Machiavelli's answer is tactical. He says it's safer to be feared because love depends on other people's feelings, which change constantly. Fear depends on consequences, which you control. But here's the part that applies to attraction, the part nobody connects. He writes that men are less hesitant to harm someone who makes himself loved than someone who makes himself feared. Read that again. Makes himself loved. The act of trying to be loved, of working for approval, of bending yourself into what you think someone wants, that's what makes you vulnerable. Now apply that to dating. When you text immediately, agree with everything she says, rearrange your schedule to fit hers, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, you're trying to make yourself loved. And on some level, everyone can sense it. It doesn't create attraction, it creates the opposite. Not because people are cruel, but because desperation signals low value. It signals that you don't have options, that you need this to work, and need is the death of desire. Here's a story. 2 guys, same college, same social circle. Guy A is decent-looking, polite, always available. He meets a woman at a party, gets her number, texts her that night saying how great it was to meet her. He's responsive, available, enthusiastic. She's polite but distant. Guy B is less conventionally attractive, a little rough around the edges. He talks to the same woman, but when she asks for his number, he says, "Maybe later, I'm heading out." 3 days pass before he texts. His message is short. She responds in minutes. They're dating 2 weeks later. What's the difference? Guy A made himself loved. Guy B made himself feared. Not feared in the sense of danger, but feared in the sense of loss. She didn't know if he was interested. She didn't know if she'd hear from him again. That uncertainty created tension, and tension is what attraction lives on. Machiavelli understood that power dynamics aren't just about politics. They're about human psychology. The person who needs less has more influence. The person who can walk away holds the frame. And in attraction, the frame is everything. Let's talk about why this works on a neurological level. There's a concept in psychology called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. When you don't know if you're going to get a reward, Your brain releases more dopamine than if the reward is guaranteed. Uncertainty is more stimulating than certainty. A text from someone who's unpredictable feels more exciting than a text from someone who always replies instantly. It's not fair, it's not romantic, but it's how we're wired. Machiavelli didn't have MRI machines, but he observed human behavior across centuries of political betrayal and alliance. He saw that people value what they have to work for. They dismiss what's handed to them, and he built an entire philosophy around that observation. Most dating advice does the opposite. It tells you to communicate your feelings, to be vulnerable early, to show interest clearly so there's no confusion. And that advice isn't wrong in theory. In a perfect world, honesty and transparency would be rewarded. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in one where people are more attracted to what they're unsure of than what they're certain of. You've probably experienced this yourself. Think about the last time someone was way too into you right away. Maybe they complimented you constantly, wanted to spend every moment together, talked about the future in week 2. How did that feel? If you're honest, it probably felt suffocating. Not because they were bad people, but because there was no challenge, no mystery, nothing to chase. Now think about someone you wanted but weren't sure about. Someone who was warm one day and distant the next. Someone who seemed interested but never quite committed. That person probably stayed in your head for weeks, maybe months. That's intermittent reinforcement. That's Machiavelli's principle in action. Here's the controversial part. I'm not saying you should manipulate people. I'm saying you should stop manipulating yourself into being overly available. Because that's what excessive availability is. It's a strategy rooted in fear. Fear that if you don't respond fast enough, text enough, show enough interest, the other person will lose interest. But that fear creates the exact outcome you're trying to avoid. Let me give you 3 behaviors that separate scarcity-minded men from abundance-minded men. Behavior 1, response time. A scarcity-minded man texts back instantly, every time. He's afraid that a delayed response will be interpreted as disinterest. An abundance-minded man responds when it's natural, not because he's playing games, but because he has a life that doesn't revolve around his phone. Sometimes that's 10 minutes, sometimes that's 3 hours. The key is inconsistency rooted in genuine priority, not calculated distance. Behavior 2, availability. A scarcity-minded man will cancel plans with friends if a woman wants to hang out. He'll rearrange his week to accommodate her schedule. An abundance-minded man has a schedule that matters to him. He's willing to make time, but not at the expense of everything else. When he does make time, it feels like a choice, not a default. And choices are attractive. Defaults are not. Behavior 3, agreement. A scarcity-minded man agrees with everything she says because he's afraid disagreement will create conflict. An abundance-minded man has his own opinions and isn't afraid to express them respectfully. He's not contrarian for the sake of it, but he's not a mirror either. He's a separate person with his own perspective. And that separateness is what makes connection possible. You can't connect with someone who has no edges.
These aren't tricks, they're reflections of internal state. And that's what Machiavelli understood. The behaviors don't create the power creates the behaviors. A prince who believes he can be overthrown acts paranoid and weak. A prince who knows he has options acts decisive and calm. Same with attraction. A man who believes he has options doesn't chase desperately. A man who believes this is his only chance does. So how do you shift from scarcity to abundance when you don't feel abundant yet? You start by building a life that's genuinely fulfilling without a relationship. I know that sounds like generic self-help garbage, but hear me out. When your happiness depends entirely on someone else's attention, you're in a position of weakness. Not moral weakness, strategic weakness. Machiavelli would call that being dependent on fortune. You've given someone else control over your emotional state. And when people sense they have that kind of power over you, it doesn't make them value you more, it makes them take you for granted. Here's a tactical reframe. Stop thinking about attraction as something you generate in someone else. Start thinking about it as something you allow someone else to experience with you. That's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. You're not performing for approval. You're living your life and letting people join if they're compatible. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Mark. Mark spent his 20s trying to figure out what women wanted. He read books, watched videos, analyzed every interaction. He'd go on dates and afterward replay every sentence he said, looking for mistakes. He was smart, kind, successful, but he couldn't keep anyone interested past a few weeks. Then something happened. His mom got sick. He had to move back home for 6 months to help take care of her. During that time, dating wasn't even on his radar. He was focused on physical therapy appointments, managing medications, keeping his remote job afloat. A woman he'd gone on 2 dates with months earlier texted to check in. He responded briefly, honestly, said he was dealing with family stuff and didn't have bandwidth for much else. She respected that. They stayed in loose contact. When things stabilized and Mark moved back, they reconnected. But something was different. Mark wasn't trying anymore. He wasn't performing. He was just himself, unfiltered. He'd talk about the hard stuff without making it heavy. He'd make plans, but also cancel them if he was exhausted without over-explaining. And she was more interested than ever, not because he played hard to get, but because he genuinely had priorities beyond her approval. That's Machiavelli's principle in its purest form. He stopped making himself loved, and paradoxically, he became more attractive. Now let's talk about the thing that even confident men get wrong. You can have abundance, you can have purpose, you can have frame, but if you do one thing wrong, it collapses. That thing is outcome dependency. Outcome dependency is when you need a specific result from an interaction to feel good about yourself. You need her to text back. You need the date to go well. You need her to like you. That need creates pressure, and pressure kills presence. When you're outcome dependent, you're not actually experiencing the moment, you're in your head, monitoring her reactions, adjusting your behavior based on what you think she wants. She can feel that. Everyone can feel that. Machiavelli's princes didn't beg for loyalty. They created conditions where loyalty was the rational choice. They didn't need any one ally because they had strategies for multiple scenarios. That's the energy you want. Not indifference, but non-attachment. You're engaged, present, genuinely interested, but your sense of self isn't riding on what happens next.
Here's how you practice that. Before any interaction that matters to you, ask yourself, what's the worst realistic outcome? She's not interested. She doesn't text back. The date goes nowhere. Okay, then what? Your life continues. You have friends, goals, interests, other opportunities. When you internalize that you'll be fine either way, the interaction becomes lighter. You stop trying to control it and start experiencing it. And that shift, that's when attraction happens naturally. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about being cold. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely caring about your own life enough that one person's response doesn't define your worth. Machiavelli was not advocating cruelty for its own sake. He was advocating strategic detachment. He was saying, don't let your emotions make you weak. Don't give people power over you by needing their approval. And in the context of attraction, that wisdom is just as relevant today as it was in 1513. Let's bring this full circle. Most men are walking around trying to be loved. They're nice, accommodating, always available. They think that's the path to connection, and they're confused when it doesn't work because they're playing the wrong game. Attraction isn't built on comfort, it's built on tension. Not hostile tension, but the tension of uncertainty, challenge, and earned access. When you make yourself too available, too predictable, too accommodating, you remove the tension. And without tension, there's no attraction, just comfort. And comfort is what you feel for a friend, not someone you desire. Machiavelli knew that power isn't given, it's taken, not through force, but through presence. The prince who believes he deserves the throne acts like it. The man who believes he's valuable carries himself accordingly. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't rearrange his life for scraps of validation. He lives according to his own standards and lets others rise to meet him. That's the cruel truth Machiavelli understood. People don't value what they don't have to work for. They don't respect what's always available, and they don't desire what's guaranteed. If you want to be attractive, stop trying to be loved. Start being someone worth earning. Here's what you do next. Look at your last 10 interactions with someone you're attracted to. How many of those interactions were you trying to make yourself loved? How many times did you text first, accommodate their schedule, agree when you actually disagreed, perform instead of just exist? If the answer is most of them, you know what needs to change. Start small. Don't text back instantly every time, not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely busy living a life that matters. Have plans that you don't cancel. Have opinions you don't soften. Have standards you don't compromise. Not to manipulate attraction, but because those things make you a more complete person, and complete people are magnetic. If this perspective challenged you, or if it clarified something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate, drop a comment and let me know which part hit hardest. I read every single one. And if you want more breakdowns of social dynamics that actually work in the real world, hit that like button and subscribe. This channel exists because too many guys are stuck following advice that sounds good but doesn't work. Let's change that. Remember, Machiavelli's cruelest truth is also his most liberating one. You don't need anyone's approval to be valuable. You already are. Act like it.